today we're going to talk about why willpower just simply isn't enough. So stop trying harder, why willpower fails under money stress. And the theme for today is around the whole transformation and the shift from pressure to peace when we're dealing with our money.
Welcome to Breaking Financial Chains, where we combine practical money guidance with emotional healing to help you break free from financial limitations. I'm Tanya Riverson, your financial wingwoman.
Hi there and welcome to another episode of Breaking Financial Chains. I'm so happy that you're here. And this is super exciting, this episode, because this is episode number 50 that I'm recording for you today. It feels like a huge milestone. More to come on all of that, but it feels like the habit is well and truly here to stay, to be coming and talking to you. So if you've got any favourite episodes, if you've got any light bulb moments that you've had when you've been listening to any of these, I would absolutely love to hear about it. Please do reach out. So I want to sort of recap on the typical kind of advice that we hear all the time, or that you may have been used to being given, or you might even tell yourself on a regular basis when you think, I really need to get all of my ducks lined up in a row, or get all my eggs in one basket, or not in one basket, as the case may be. But let's start with the advice that just doesn't work, even though it's probably the most well heard of, the most common, particularly when it comes to money. Just be more disciplined, because it's that easy. Stick to a budget, stop spending, get organised, have more self-control. We know these, right? We know that this is what we should do. Logically, we know that if we were to engage and come up with some kind of a routine or our version of some of these, that might work. But the problem isn't usually knowledge. It's often not effort either. People often want to, and we have the motivation to put these things in place. In fact, many women I work with are trying incredibly hard. So there is no more effort to give. There is no more that can be done. The problem is that we're exhausted from trying a lot of the time. So if you're trying harder and harder but still feeling stuck, maybe the issue isn't a lack of willpower. Maybe you're trying to solve the wrong problem. So let's dive in. We tend to think about willpower as an unlimited resource. It's just something that's there and we turn on a tap, and if I want something hard enough, strong enough, for long enough, then I will do it. We will get to our goal. As if successful people simply have more of that they can just tap into. But research and real life tells us something completely different. That willpower actually is pretty finite. It gets depleted, especially when we're juggling all of the things, spinning all of the plates, stressed, overwhelmed, sleep deprived, emotionally drained, and carrying responsibility for everyone else. So if you see yourself in any of these things that I'm talking about, if you spot a bit of a pattern, please do take a second just to notice. This isn't about judgment. This isn't about a stick to beat yourself over the head with. This is just noticing. The more pressure you're under, the less willpower you're going to have available. And logically, that makes a lot of sense. But what often then means is that money decisions become harder, not easier. So with the best will in the world, it simply isn't enough. Money stress has a very innate ability to cause more problems. So when money feels threatening at an emotional level, it's our nervous system that responds. It's not the thinking logical part of our brain, which we would like to think we can just turn off and on like a tap. Real life will tell us that that's just simply not the case. Your brain starts prioritising survival, not strategy, not planning, not long-term thinking. Pure and simple survival. Not even get through the day. It might be, let's just get through the next 10 minutes, let's just get through this next call, let's just get through this next meeting, which can ultimately then lead to impulsive spending, avoidance, procrastination, emotional decision making, which I see so often, and an all or nothing approach, which is my personal favourite. If I'm going on the diet, then it's going to be restrict the sugar, increase the fibre, increase the steps, drink all the water. I'm going to do all of those things. I'm going to do that from day one because I very much have an all or nothing mentality. And then what usually happens? Well, when things don't go to plan or we aren't able to do all of those things all in one go from the outset, we blame ourselves and it becomes something else that we've failed at, in inverted commas, and it just becomes more proof for our brain to say to us, yeah, but when you try these things, you don't do it right, you fail, you get it wrong. And it then becomes something that we judge ourselves with. We don't need any judgment from anyone else. We do enough of that on our own. We tell ourselves we need more discipline, but the reality is a stressed brain struggles to access the very skills that we're asking it to use. So it's not that we need more motivation and more willpower and more drive and more just get up and do it. We need to come at this from a different way if we're going to be successful at something and it is something that we're going to stick with and that's going to last. And where I see so many people that I work with getting stuck, it's that whole pressure trap, effectively. You feel stressed about money. So instead of making things easier for ourselves, we put more pressure on ourselves, which creates more stress, which then, we all know how this is going to go. This reduces capacity. This creates more mistakes. This creates more pressure. And the cycle starts off with money stress equals pressure equals reduced capacity equals financial mistakes equals more stress, and then we go round and round and round, and that pattern keeps getting repeated. And trying harder inside this circle very, very rarely works because pressure is the fuel that keeps that cycle alive. We can't access logical thinking, we can't strategize, and we then start to try and put one foot in front of the other, and our emotional brain is saying, just try harder, just try harder. You're not trying hard enough, you don't want it enough. And what I also see is high achieving people, high achieving individuals, and women are especially vulnerable to this. So we see someone who's very capable, who's very successful, especially on the outside, in terms of what we can see of job titles, achievements, where they live, how they look, what job they have, what car they drive. They're responsible. They've built their life through pushing through, push. Maybe they've got a little bit of a reputation for being that pushy person. Maybe we've earned ourselves a label or two. When actually all that we're doing is trying to get from one place to another. So when money feels difficult, the instinct is to just work harder, push harder, try harder. Because that strategy has worked in so many areas of life so far, so as a point of reference, it becomes, if this isn't something I've been successful at before, I'll just do it this way because this sounds familiar, or this is what everybody tells you that you should do. But when the problem is nervous system overload, which is exactly what this is, more pressure creates less progress. It's like pressing harder on the accelerator when the handbrake is still on, and we're just going to end up going nowhere, potentially causing more problems. So I would like to put to you then the alternative in this situation. And the alternative is regulation of our nervous system before we decide what the resolution is going to be, or before we start to make a half-cocked plan around, I will just do it this way. I will just continue to do what I've always done. I will do what this particular individual has said I should do, rather than actually stopping, taking a second, maybe taking a little bit of a breath, getting outside in nature, getting some fresh air, whatever that looks like for you. It's the regulation of the nervous system that we're looking to aim for, because when we can think about something calmly, when we can take that deep breath, all of the logical aspects of our brain start to come back online. We start to be able to access that prefrontal cortex that reminds us of the things that we perhaps wouldn't consider if we're going at 90 miles an hour. So if the answer isn't more effort, would it be fair to say the answer is more safety instead? I don't know. Please discuss. I invite you to journal around this. Exactly what is it? What does safety look like for you? And if you could take that scrunched up feeling in your stomach, or that feeling of butterflies or pins and needles or prickly feeling, or whatever any sort of money anxiety feels like for you, if that could be removed before we approach any sort of planning or reviewing, whatever it is that we need to do, any reflection around money, that would be preferable, because we can access the longer term thinking. We can access the strategizing. We can access the planning that we want to include in all of the aspects as we move forward. So before we review the budget, tackle the debt, make the investment decision, or have a difficult conversation around money, ask yourself, am I calm enough to think clearly? Have I created enough space? Have I earmarked enough time? Or am I flying by the seat of my pants from this to the next thing because I've got a child to pick up from an after school club, or I've got to pick someone up from football practice or dance practice or swimming training, or whatever that might look like? Because I promise you one thing, clarity absolutely does live on the other side of regulation. And if this is something that you just can't relate to, this isn't something that you feel you've ever experienced before, instead of using that as something to punish yourself with, please just consider that you just haven't had that clarity yet. You haven't had that guidance, or you didn't realise it was something so simple, and I'm saying that in inverted commas. It is a simple thing to calm yourself down. It is not necessarily an easy thing to do. So this is very nuanced. There are lots of different aspects to it. But the clarity that we're looking for that lives on the other side of regulation is the opposite to pressure. We're shifting from pressure to peace, which is what the overall theme is for this episode. And this is why I talk so much about nervous system regulation, rest, having an awareness of your capacity, and just a little sprinkling of self-compassion if that's all that you can manage. But feel free to be as liberal with that as you possibly can. These aren't separate from financial well-being. They're all part of it. They are, I will go so far as to say, an absolutely essential and integral part of financial well-being. So if we are to consider some practical ways that we could maybe start to experiment to reduce money pressure, and I say consider some practical ways because what will work for one person will not work for someone else. And this is something that I see so commonly and frequently when I'm working with my coaching clients in this space, is that we are all different. There is no textbook approach or response or right way to deal with this, because we are all coming at it from our own perspective, from inside our own heads, with our own lived experience, with our own trauma and everything else that we're carrying with us. Therefore, our responses and triggers and issues are going to come from different places as well. So try a few, try them all, hate them all, come and tell me they're rubbish, but come and have a conversation with me if that's how you feel about it. Because by just assuming that all of these things won't work, particularly if you've heard them 100 times before, is giving up before you've even got out of the starting gate. And I promise you that some of these things will. So one of the first things we could attempt to do is possibly shrink the task. So instead of, I want to save £1,000 or I want to save £100,000, break that down into smaller chunks. Let's not say I'm going to sort my finances today. What does that look like? What does that entail? How far have you got already? Maybe shrinking the task looks like opening all of your bank statements, or particularly if they're hidden in that drawer in the hallway, or downloading all of your statements from your online banking apps, downloading all your credit card statements and saving them all in one place, using a file name structure that makes it logical for you to be able to find them, and then come back another time to do the next step. Review one account, not every single account. Take one step if the path to saving £1,000 feels too big, how can we break that down to be something more manageable? One thing I see all the time is reducing the shame. And sometimes we need someone to help us with that. Sometimes we need someone to help us think through or talk through a particular situation. But we can start to rewire our brain with the language that we use from now. Even if you don't believe it to start with, even if you don't believe it all of the time, the more we hear, the more we see, the more we read, the more we say out loud, the more common and comfortable those words are going to feel. The more that our brain, the elasticity in our brain is going to get more used to hearing those terms. So instead of, I should have sorted this by now, I should have done this years ago, we say, I'm sorting this now. I'm sorting this one step at a time. I'm sorting this in a manageable way. Being super kind to ourselves at the same time, because one creates pressure, should have, coulda, shoulda, woulda. The other creates progress, and make yourself a list and tick them off as you go. Whatever does it for you. I am a firm favourite of making a list in my bullet journal and crossing everything off as I go, even if that means I've missed something off my list to start with, but I'm going to write it on there just so that I can cross it off later. It helps me create a log for what I have achieved, but it helps me to see the progress one step at a time. And my brain really responds to that. My nervous system really responds to that. So do what works for you. Something else we can do on a practical viewpoint is to build financial confidence slowly. If it's not something that you feel you have, you probably have more financial awareness, financial literacy than you give yourself credit for. Maybe you don't realise that some of the things that you do know about are about financial literacy, but maybe someone's not explained it to you in a certain way. Maybe you haven't associated it with certain behaviours or a routine. But take it one step at a time. Confidence doesn't come from giant leaps. It comes from repeated evidence that you can handle small things and that it doesn't send you spiralling. It doesn't send you into unhelpful behaviour like picking up your phone and looking on Amazon or whatever. It's about taking notice of the small wins, because they really matter, to show a pattern of behaviour, to show yourself, to prove yourself wrong if you're telling yourself that this is something that you can't do. And consistency is the same with so many different things. Consistency is far more important than intensity. So in the same way as we might want to increase our water intake or get to the gym or get a certain number of steps or get a certain amount of sleep every night, it's not healthy to get 3 hours sleep a night and then get 12 hours sleep over the weekend every night, even though that I just made that up on the spot. That's not healthy. I don't know what those hours actually add up to while I'm speaking to you, but it would be better to have every night to have 6 or 7 hours of sleep instead of the all or nothing approach. So a 15-minute weekly money check-in beats a 3-hour panic session every 6 months. And it becomes much more manageable. It becomes part of the routine. It becomes just something that we do rather than, oh my God, I need to find 3 hours in my diary to be able to find the time to sort through this because my tax return is due, or we want to remortgage the house and the broker wants various bank statements and sets of accounts and they want all of my tax returns and I need to get those up to date. So taking it into small bite-sized chunks is far easier to manage than a huge entire weekend-long binge session of looking at the financial aspects of potentially things that you're avoiding. How this fits in with the sort of transition between pressure to peace, what we want to see is a change of behaviour, possibly, but ultimately it's about changing how it makes us feel, because that's what's going to have the most impact on our nervous system. So pressure tells us that we have to hurry up, that we have to fix it, we have to do more, we have to work harder, and it needs to be done yesterday, and why are you not finished yet? And heart rate rises, our heart rate variation falls through the floor, our cortisol, adrenaline rises, and we're running on fumes and caffeine and alcohol or whatever it might take to get you through that longer session. Whereas instead, what we want is to have a peaceful outlook, a peaceful frame of mind, which is telling us to pause, to assess, to choose, and to act intentionally. Ultimately, there are no knee-jerk reactions when we come at things from a place of calm and peace. We have the luxury to take a breath and think things through, and maybe have a conversation with someone if that helps us, or maybe look a few things up before we start to make any decisions. Because one creates survival, the other creates sustainability. And if we're to compare the two, would you rather the pressure to survive or the sustainability to maintain peace? That then becomes the choice, rather than I've got to deal with my money and I have to tick these things off the list. And sustainable wealth is always built from a place of clarity. So it's going to be something that's much more sustainable. It's going to be something that you don't need someone to convince you or motivate you to crack on, because you are well aware by noticing the changes in your breathing and how it makes you feel, if we notice at the time how much more manageable these tasks can become. So if you've been trying harder and harder with money and still feeling stuck, I want you to hear this. You are not failing because you're weak. You may simply be trying to solve a pressure problem with willpower, which is never going to work. Willpower was never designed to carry that load forever. The goal isn't to become more disciplined. The goal is to create enough safety, capacity, and calm that good decisions become easier. And they will become easier over time, because lasting financial change isn't built through punishment, it's built through peace. So hopefully that's going to land with you. See if there's anything that comes up for you while you're listening to this, while you're driving home later, or when you pick your pen up for a good old journaling session. As you know, I like to try and come up with a reflective question for each of our episodes. So here's your question for today. Where in my financial life am I relying on more willpower when what I might actually need is more support, more clarity, and more calm? Be honest and see what comes up. I'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for joining me today on Breaking Financial Chains. Remember, you have the power to transform your relationship with money one step at a time. If this episode helped you, please subscribe and leave a review to help others find their path to financial freedom. I'm Tanya, your financial wing woman, and I'll see you next week.